Hey, gang. Today we're going to talk about consensus All-Americans two times.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, gang. DP here, Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Greatly appreciate it. And I applaud you every day that show up for the content. Greatly appreciate you. I want to thank the folks from Built Bar. We'll send it to Rico, have him tell you all about it.
Thanks, DP. Are you guys looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and the calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar on the market, Built. Now, if you're like me, you work out from time to time, you need something to eat after you work out that's really tasty and really healthy, then you guys need to get these Built bars. They also have Built Puffs. They're healthy, like I said, and they taste fantastic. Seriously, they're so good, you won't even know that they're good for you. What makes them so good? They've got 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I don't know how they do it, but they taste like a candy bar while also being good for you. Now, if you want to find them, you don't just have to go to Built.com. You can go to Walmart or Sam's Club, and they have all these amazing specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right. You go to your nearest Walmart, walk all the way to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built bars. And if you want a lot more, go to Sam's Club. Grab yourself the big old 13-bar box with all the hit flavors, Brownie Batter Puff and Churro Puff. You'll thank me later. Back to you, DP.
Thanks, Rico. Appreciate it. And again, we thank the folks from Built Bar. Again, I'm DP, and I wanted to spend this episode kind of going down history lane. And if I said Nebraska football All-American, there's 90 plus names that come to mind. And in order to get to elite status in this conversation, the first thing that I had to say was, one, not only are you consensus All-American, but you're a consensus All-American twice. Back-to-back years, consensus All-Americans. And then to make this more elite, I wanted to add another thing. It's one thing to be a consensus All-American. It's another to be a two-time consensus All-American, and yet a third. Very rare air, elite space in Nebraska football is if you took those two things and then added College Hall of Fame. The College Football Hall of Fame. Not the Nebraska Athletic Hall of Fame, but the College Football Hall of Fame. And in your number of numbers, you can say that if, depending on who you talk to, between 94 and 96 Huskers were consensus All-Americans, the list shrinks quite a bit when you ask who are the back-to-back year consensus All-Americans. And then those who also manage to be elected into the College Football Hall of Fame. Now, there'll be other episodes where we go into finding the consensus All-Americans. We'll go up and down the list, and then the two-time All-Americans who, again, in their own elite in their own space. But this is rare air we're talking about when you add to the fact that College Football Hall of Fame was included in that. And to start with that, we have to go to Bay City, Michigan. Bay City, Michigan. And this is some 100 years ago is the tracking for all of this. Now, Bay City, Michigan. What if I said to you that there's a lineman, he was 6'1", 240 pounds, ended up being drafted by the Cleveland Browns, but he goes to the College Football Hall of Fame in 1991. He was Big Ten Player of the Year. When you talk about Wayne Malin, it's one of those names that we, as Husker fans, you don't get discussed enough. I mean, 6'1", 240. Look, his career at Nebraska, they were 25-7 throughout the course of those years. He was unfortunately lost in a plane crash in 1987. But in 1967, Big 8 Player of the Year, first-time All-American, 2 years consecutively, played middle guard for the defense. As a matter of fact, even excelled on special teams as well. But died in a plane crash in Michigan in June of 1987. But that's not a name that we talk about nearly as much as we should if you're talking about the greats of Nebraska football. And that's what we're talking about here. There's another name that is slightly more familiar because it was attached to the track and field stadium. But we don't talk about Ed Weir enough. It's rare. It's rare space you're talking about. It's the Huskers' first Hall of Famer. And this goes back 100 years to almost 100 years to 1924 and 1925. Undersized, but not at the time. Ferocious. Also coached other sports. Became athletic director. Was an assistant coach for Nebraska. Coached at other places. But Ed Weir is a name that, because of his work in the football program and the athletic department, is a name that, again, we don't talk about enough. When you hear about, and we'll get to Nebraska football, Mount Rushmore in future episodes. And I'm going to say this, that we won't include coaches in that Mount Rushmore. It's just the players' Mount Rushmore. And if you feel good about yourself, go ahead and put it down. You can put down in the comments who your Mount Rushmore will be. We'll deal with that later. But Weir and Malin may not make the list, but these are the forefathers. Like, these are the founding fathers of Nebraska football, and their names should be mentioned as we talk about a couple other things. As we go up and down this list into the elites, the absolute elites, the next 6 names tend to be the people that people think about. And I'll surprise you and say this right off the bat, that we didn't include Tommy Frazier in this because he's not in the College Football Hall of Fame, even though there have been lists that have voted Tommy Frazier one of the 10 best players in college football history. And he was certainly one of the best 65. That was a list that had 7 Huskers on it. But he's not in the College Football Hall of Fame. That's a discussion for another show. That's another episode unto itself. I'll tell you that in advance. It's a great lead and a great tease. But we'll make the case later for Tommy Frazier being in the College Football Hall of Fame. But we'll take a break here. And when we come back, we'll get into, there are 6 names that we can do the dance with. They're names that Husker fans know and love. And if you're basing it on consensus All-America, repeat levels of that success, national championships, and College Football Hall of Fame, this makes this group of 6 super elite. Welcome back to Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. In this episode, now we mentioned some of the names that should be spoken of more often in Ed Weir and Wayne Malin. But let's get into one of the elite players in Nebraska football history. Rich Glover, in his 71 and 72 years, consensus All-Americans, and as a matter of discussion, the best defensive player in the country for those 2 years. What was done in the biggest of games, I mean, we're talking about 20 tackle ball games and just racking up numbers. Glover wasn't the biggest of interior linemen. When you talk about, playing at 6'2", 230, and playing in the interior line in the Big 8 conference, and didn't care. I believe there's only 10 players in history who won both the Outland and Lombardi trophies in the same year. Rich Glover is one of those people. That's how elite and special Rich Glover was as a defender. So if you really want to talk about it, again, if you're talking about a Mount Rushmore, and again, I know that a lot of people want to put Tommy Frazier on it, you might want to put Lawrence Phillips, like, you'll have your own list of people, but Rich Glover's one of one. He's one of one. That's it. There's one Rich Glover to put up the numbers that he put up. And again, we thank New Jersey for sending in their finest. And New Jersey has been wonderful in sending elite talent to Lincoln, Nebraska. Another of those being from Camden, New Jersey, Mike Rozier. And the back-to-back years that Rozier put together are only amplify the fact that he played in. I believe the number was something ridiculous that he only played in 52% of the quarters that he was eligible to play in. It's crazy. That's crazy. But the numbers were exceptional. And if you remove Eric Crouch from the numbers, and let me just say this as well, that oh my goodness, Eric Crouch doesn't make this list because he wasn't a back-to-back All-American. That if you remove Crouch's rushing touchdowns from the list, Mike Rozier's number one. Rozier's number one. The 2,100 yards in a year with 29 touchdowns. That's in a single year. Heisman Trophy worthy indeed. 52 touchdowns for the career. And if you remove Crouch's numbers from it, he's number one. To say that Mike Rozier was elite is an understatement. We had in a previous episode, we talked about the best runners at Nebraska. And I thought to myself, Lawrence Phillips may have been more talented, but no runner did more for Nebraska than Mike Rozier. I think that's a fair statement to make. If you want to talk elite athletes in the space that we're talking about, Grant Wistrom was a phenom. Size, speed, power, big plays, 50-plus tackles for loss over the course of a career, 50-plus sacks in that space. The draft, the NFL career is its own thing, but what he did at Nebraska, and mind you, in meaningful games. That's the big part, is that you go, wait a minute, if you want to add an additional check, the intangibles for each of these elite athletes, is that for some you can say that they did them in the biggest games in Nebraska football history, making some of the biggest plays in Nebraska football history. And if you're talking about Grant Wistrom, look, he was a force. He impacted. He made everybody around him better. He was cerebral, physical, and consistent. Those are things that, as you talk about them, and then you get to our next elite, well, Omaha South can be proud. You send Dave Remington to Lincoln, Nebraska, and the most decorated offensive lineman in college football history at 6'3", 290. When an offensive lineman is the conference's player of the year, a lineman, I'm going to ask for your help here. You can tell me down in the comments if you can think of another offensive lineman who was conference player of the year. I just don't know. And he's so good, by the way, that they named the college football trophy about him, offensive lineman trophy about him. So I'm not real sure that you can be more elite than Dave Remington. It's spectacular. All of it's spectacular. I want to pause there because in the list of players, and again, you're talking about Wayne Malin, you're talking about Mike Rozier, you're talking about Ed Weir, you're talking about Dave Remington, Grant Wistrom, Richard Glover, that pro careers aside, to have a collective winning percentage of 83%, and then the number of conference titles, conference trophies, then national championships, then doing it in consecutive years, then through all of that, right? Foregone conclusion, end results and awards are the accumulation of achievements along the way? Well, yes. Call them elite and special. But as we put a pin there, I will ask you that for most Husker fans, if they were to start a Mount Rushmore of football players, there's one that cannot be argued, it cannot be debated, it cannot be reconsidered or reevaluated. He is simply the Husker. He's the Husker football player. We'll talk about that man when we come back to Locked On Huskers. Hey, gang, welcome back. And again, thank you for watching Locked On Huskers and making it a part of your day today, Husker content. If you have not, in fact, please hit the subscribe button and then feel free to share, like and share this content each and every single day. We've gone through the list of, and it's a very elite list of consensus All-Americans who repeated that award, that honor, and then went on and was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. Now, if we have this discussion 2 years from now, it may be different. It'll probably be different because some of the people who did not make this list because they had only been All-American, because they've been All-American twice back-to-back, but they have not been put in the Hall of Fame. There's some names to consider. Darrell White was an offensive tackle from East Orange, New Jersey, 72 and 73. Back-to-back consensus All-Americans, not in the College Football Hall of Fame. Aaron Taylor, guard from Wichita Falls, Texas, Outland Trophy winner, back-to-back consensus All-Americans, not in the College Football Hall of Fame. Again, as the things change, the list will change and the considerations will change as well. There's some other players. Willie Harper, also 71 and 72. And I got to imagine those 70, 71, 72 practices must have been something else. They must have been something else, man. Those must have been war zones. Because you had College Football Hall of Famers on both sides of the ball going head-to-head on a day-to-day basis. But as they say, iron and all that. That's what that would look like. So there's a few players who have the back-to-back years, but they have not been honored with that Hall of Fame thing. But there's one that has. And to me, he's Mr. Nebraska football. If you're going to have a Mount Rushmore, first of all, when they do the carving of the Mount Rushmore, what we need is his game program picture, the picture they take, their senior year. Because this cat had the baddest big lapel. He had a white blazer with stripes, and then a big lapel, and then he had the mini afro, but he had the line and he had the part over here, so he had the part afro. So you got to be a different kind of brother anyway. So Omaha, I don't know what y'all was doing back in 1970, but y'all was doing the thing because Johnny Rogers sat in front of that photographer and put in some work. It was special to watch. The 1972 Heisman Trophy winner, Walter Camp Award winner. Listen, at the time, and people make the mistake of measuring players universally, but I say when you're comparing players, if you're going to do that from different eras, you have to mark how much better was this player than his era. Like you can't say they were slower, bigger, stronger, faster then or now. You can say, as far as human capability at an elite level, what we know to be true is that Johnny Rogers was a different universe than anybody who played in the Big 8 Conference, anybody who was playing in 1972, anybody who was playing in 1971. Johnny Rogers was different. He was just different. He had the receiving records in Nebraska when he left. He had the receiving records in the Big 8 Conference when he left. He had the return, the most punt returns. He had the most kick returns. Literally, if there was a record that could be put in play for somebody that played wingback, who returned kicks, who touched the ball offensively, Johnny Rodgers was as an elite of college football player as there ever was. And it's a small class. It's a small class. Literally, you could put him and Archie Griffin in the same room. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure. Maybe Timmy Tebow gets an invite. But that's about it for guys who had that longevity of career, that level of success, and was that much better than everybody else that was playing the game. I wanted to take the trip down because it forced me to get back in the history books and relearn Husker history. Any day that I get an opportunity to get smarter about Nebraska athletics is a good day in my book. Hopefully, I spark something in you that'll make you search or curious or confirm something that you already thought to be true. We will continue to do this over the course of summer, and we'll go through. I can go on a limb and say the next conversation we'll have is talking about those consensus All-America quarterbacks at the University of Nebraska. We'll do that on the next episode of Locked On Huskers. Join in, please. And I thank you once again for making Locked On your first watch and listen each and every single day. We'll close it with the 3 words we love so much. Go Big Red.